Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Uday Kumar. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
My name is Uday Kumar, and I'm the founder and CEO of Flare AI. We are based here in the great state of Texas in Austin.
Well, if you can just tell our audience a bit more about your background. Obviously, this is not your first company, and many of our audiences in the e-commerce space. I'm curious kind of how you got into this space in the first place. And if you can just share more about that.
Definitely. It's not my first rodeo. I actually started in the corporate world at Oracle. I did e-commerce supply chain for them back in Silicon Valley. Then, my wife and I, we decided, let's chill a little. And we moved to, at that time, a sleepy little town called Austin, Texas. Of course, it's no longer sleepy. It's a happening place. And it's another, little Silicon Valley, if you will. But it's all exciting. And then I started my previous business, which was an e-commerce marketplace. And that's where I discovered why Flare AI is needed, the pain points for the e-commerce world. I created Flare AI, and now we are growing Flare AI to help other e-commerce merchants, SaaS, any kind of business that needs sales and book meetings and all that good stuff.
So in terms of, you were in the e-commerce space at an Oracle, moved to Austin, started your previous business, which was an e-commerce marketplace. I'm curious, on that marketplace, what did that marketplace consist of? What were you selling on there? And how did you kind of discover this need for a tool like Flare for SEO purposes?
Yeah, great question. It's almost like an elephant in the room problem, Dan. So my journey here has been, the way I grew my e-commerce marketplace was, believe it or not, totally organic. It was supposed to be planned, but nope, it is just, I first onboarded a few vendors, built for that marketplace, and those vendors referred other vendors. And so organically it kept growing. And soon, within a few years, I actually I divided the marketplace into various catalogs, very specialized catalogs, because obviously I was kind of competing with Amazon, so I wanted to do what Amazon couldn't do. So we were doing like specialized lab equipment and those kinds of tools, very hard to find tools for contractors, mostly B2B specialized categories. And I built this over several years. And as I kept adding more and more vendors and more products, consequently, I discovered this elephant in the room problem that affects almost every e-commerce business, which is we all assume, even I thought I knew SEO, but so even I had assumed that, hey, just give it a few months, create a product, give it a few months, it'll show up on Google and start driving sales from Google. Obviously I knew I had to do on-page SEO, but I thought that was enough. But the biggest problem that I found out, which affects most e-commerce, is to get it discovered on Google, to get it indexed by Google. That is the biggest elephant in the room problem, which people don't recognize. They keep writing content, blogs, they keep adding products, just assuming, give it 6 months, it'll show up on Google, which is farthest from the truth then. And it's not me saying it, it's Wikipedia and former CEO of Google, Schmidt, admitting that they're only able to index 4% of the internet. So 96%, imagine this. Google search generates $10 billion in sales every single day, but 96% of the businesses cannot even take advantage of that. And that's what we are here to change.
That's awesome. And I guess in terms of Flare AI, right, kind of how it works. So if you can just explain to our audience, let's just say I have my own e-commerce brand. I know the importance of Google. I know the importance of SEO. How does Flare AI work with my store?
Yeah, great question. So Flare AI essentially I like to think I know we are 6 months ahead of ChatGPT. So we are but we used the boring part of AI, the machine learning, regression analysis, that sort of thing. But essentially Flare AI has 5 AI agents, Dan. So you can think of those agents literally like people. So I tell my e-commerce prospects, when you activate Flare AI for your store, you're literally, like hiring 5 marketing people to support your marketing team. Obviously they work 24/7. They have AI expertise and they don't take a payroll. So I like to think we are 10x better than the status quo. So that's kind of how it works.
But in terms of like, for example, so it's like 5 AI agents, right? So, I mean, let's just say that you're an apparel brand with lots of different SKUs. You sell t-shirts, shorts, pants, as an example, right? So like, how does that kind of, is it going to write different content about those different products? Like, what does it actually do to help, with ranking and reaching more people? And on top of that, I'm also curious because obviously Gemini is, big on Google now. People use that. So how does it integrate with a tool like Gemini, for example?
Yeah, again, that's a concern that is very common. I mean, it's more and more search is, we all want AI search. We all want fast answers. And the world is moving towards AI search. The good news, at least from our perspective, is we are able to generate traffic not only from the traditional Google search, but also the AI searches as well. Gemini, ChatGPT search, the Claude, and all the LLMs. So wherever they have a search capability is where we can drive our traffic. In fact, one of our customers, 50% of the traffic, they're getting it from AI searches through Flare AI. So we have figured out the sauce for that. To respond to your other query, Dan, on the SEO part, we have one of the agents we have is called Always On SEO. And by using that, we have solved one of the biggest problem in the SEO industry, which is I was just talking to a customer like yesterday, and he was saying, oh, they did a great job with the on-page SEO, site navigation. They were ranked up for a few weeks, and suddenly it's all going downhill. And I said that is the most common thing you'll hear across the SEO industry. You have this awesome SEO expert come in, Dan, and they do a great job. Then you're ranked up for a few weeks. Then they move on to the next project, and the competition. They are also using SEMrush, Ahref, and all that stuff. So they know who the competition is, what they are ranking for, and they will easily outrank. The solution for that is you got to have your eyes on the website all the time. Now, you cannot really afford for a human expert to do that. So we invented something called the Always On SEO, which is constantly monitoring your average organic position, commonly called ranking. And when it goes below a certain benchmark, our agent actually re-optimizes it. And the wonderful thing is we'll be the first to take advantage of any new long tail keywords that show up. And that's how we keep our clients' pages not only ranked up once, but ranked up continuously.
So in terms of, for example, obviously, like you mentioned too, that you help with other verticals. I mean, e-commerce is a big one. So I'm curious kind of how it comes in for different verticals, people are in services or other types of products or SaaS. How does that work? Because you might have just, as opposed to lots of SKUs, just one SaaS product. So what does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, even in the e-commerce space, right? I mean, you can look at like there are coffee subscription e-commerce services, just, 2 SKUs, they're minting millions of dollars. So those, in our world, we call them thin websites. Anything per Google's definition, anything less than 500 pages is called a thin website, believe it or not. And the issue with thin websites is even with the best SEO on their pages, it's very hard to drive organic. I mean, imagine this, you got this biggest and most profitable channel, but with 100 pages, you'll never be able to drive effectively sales from Google search because you're constantly going to get outranked. So the prescription for that really is content. You got to beef it up consistently, month after month. You got to add content to your website and go beyond that 500 pages, keep going beyond that, right? That's when you really see the impact of, driving organic growth from Google search. And in fact, any AI searches.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think organic growth is a huge opportunity because, Google search is where a lot of people go to look for products or different solutions. And it's still, to your point, I think you said $10 billion in sales a day. I guess in terms of like other changes, right? Because people might be searching now on ChatGPT or other AI platforms. So where does that kind of come into the picture, if at all?
Yeah. So people ask me all the time, is SEO dead? So SEO, may change, but people will always search for something. So the search will remain. It is just that the nature of how we get our answers has become better for sure. I mean, I am the first one to say AI search is awesome because consumers get their answers faster and hopefully better. I mean, we are not there in terms of the quality of the AI search yet, but ultimately it will be there. We will get the best answer right up front, which is what consumers want. And I think, that's kind of where the world is moving towards.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in terms of the way that you've worked with brands, right? Like obviously, I think we had spoken about this earlier, is that there's a certain scale where it makes sense, right? 'Cause I think for certain brands, if you're too early stage, if you're too small, might not be a fit. So in terms of like the type of clients and customers where you've seen the most success, what are some of the criteria that I think it makes sense for someone to engage and actually get good results with you guys?
Yeah. So, and as a founder, as an entrepreneur, I went through my own journey of discovering who can benefit the most from Flare AI. So, ideally, a customer, a client that has achieved product market fit would be a good fit. So, if they come too early on, the main thing that we need is we want to understand who their ideal customer is and who their persona is. So early on in a startup or in a business, you're still finding your way, so to speak, right? So without that, knowledge of ICP and persona, it's hard for our AI to work. So I would say make sure you have achieved some kind of a revenue indicator to know, okay, you achieved product market fit. And then when you're ready to scale, the most important thing is, yes, you can scale using various channels. You can, for example, I can scale using paid ads. But where are the profits? Where is the sustainability, right? So when you're ready to scale sustainably, at that time, we are the perfect fit to come on and help.
Right. So you're saying brands that have some revenue already, they have some product market fit. That's a good opportunity there. But you're saying if they're a brand that's just launched last week, they need to figure that out on their own, understand who their ideal customer is before they engage a platform like Flare.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Makes sense. So in terms of like some of your biggest goals and objectives, right? Obviously we're, kind of mid Q2 here in 2025. So what are you really focused on for the rest of this year?
Flare AI's TAM is so huge. We can be everywhere, but we are a startup, 15 people. So really, I'm focused on specific verticals. Yes, I'm talking to an e-commerce audience. We want to work with car dealers. We want to work with auto part dealers or tools. Anyone that has a large number of SKUs, and for them, discovery will be the main issue, and always on SEO will be the main issue. So those we find we can deliver quick impact and a lot of it as well. Those are the kinds of customers that we are looking to attract.
So in terms of like the AI agents, can add more value when you have more SKUs. They can kind of like create more information and then get you ranked higher when there are more SKUs opposed to like one SKU per se.
Yeah, I mean, these 5 AI agents, they work very prescriptively, if you will. So it knows, okay, this is a SaaS company. They have 10 pages, that sort of thing. For them, really, there is a second AI agent that's called industry news, a content marketing agent. So that kicks in and that does most of the work, right? And let us say an e-commerce client that has I do have an e-commerce client that has 1 million products. And for them, really the discovery agent is the most prescriptive, if you will. So really these agents can help any kind of business. They kick in based on what is needed at that particular point of time for that business. Yeah.
Makes sense. So if you could go back in time to before you started your entrepreneurship journey, what would you say is like the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
Yeah, man, there's so many things I screwed up along the way, like most entrepreneurs, I'm thinking. But yeah, the biggest thing I would suggest to up and coming entrepreneurs is talk to people in person, talk to your prospects in person. And I am a technical guy, but I went through an accelerator group, thanks to Foundry Institute. And one of the biggest lessons I learned is the more people you talk to, you know what to do, but even more importantly, what not to do. You know what I mean? Because we are a startup, focus is everything. So that's what I would say.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's great advice. I think FIs, offer tons of value. That's actually where you and I first connected at one of their events here in town. So yeah, I think I could not agree more. We've connected in person, obviously, many times as well. So there is so much value there. So if somebody watching this wanted to use Flare AI, do you mind sharing your website or social media or both, best ways to get in contact?
Yeah, so please go to flareai.co, FLARE or you can hit me up on LinkedIn as well. Look for me, Uday Kumar, Austin, Texas. So, yeah.
Thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. It was great to be here.